The Lost World Jurassic Park is directed by Steven Spielberg and stars Jeff Goldblum, Julianne Moore, and Vince Vaughn. This film tells a story about Ian Malcolm brought in by John Hammond to go in and document Isla Sorna, the original island in which all the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park were bred and shipped into Isla Nublar. Unfortunately, the island was succumbed to a hurricane, and all the dinosaurs broke loose and are free to roam that island like the dinosaurs were in Jurassic Park. But InGen, the company run by Peter Ludlow, a nephew of John Hammond, he wants to take the dinosaurs from Isla Sorna and bring them to Jurassic Park San Diego, which was the original plan for Jurassic Park to be brought to the world. And they want to do that in trying to make more money, like always with these Jurassic Park bad guys. But John Hammond doesn't want that. He assembles Ian Malcolm, Nick Van Owen, Eddie Carr, and Julianne Moore's character Sarah Harding, and they are going to try and photograph the island and stop InGen from bringing these dinosaurs to the mainland. Unfortunately, the mission for both sides go wrong, and now it's a matter of survival. Now, this is quite a long description for the story of this film, because this film has a lot going on, more so than the first movie, where the first movie is like a simple tour through the island, characters coming in being wowed, giving their opinions of what's going on with the science of everything. Then the later half of the film is like a survival. This is a bit more complicated. We're out of that simplicity of the first film, and we're into sequel territory where everything is a bit more layered. We get a lot more world building here. We get a lot more characters to learn about and to be with. We get more background behind InGen and their corporate politics and the people behind the scenes of InGen, apart from just John Hammond and maybe a lawyer. We actually get to see the people of InGen this time around and see how they work. And it makes them really formidable antagonists in the film against Jeff Goldblum and his team. And overall, I think the balancing of these two plot lines, with the InGen plot line and Ian Malcolm's plot line with his team, I think how these two plot lines were handled and how these two teams were basically balanced out was pretty effective. In the beginning of the film, they are for the most part separate from each other. But by the middle, when things go wrong and when the second act starts, and it's a matter of survival, we get to see them banter with one another. We get to see how they conflict with one another in terms of ideologies, and it creates a tense atmosphere between the two teams. But one thing is for sure, that they need to eventually work together to try and survive. And they gradually, over time, start to warm up to one another. But by the end of the film, it's all for nothing, as most of the teams just didn't survive. And that's what I mostly love about this film. The body count is higher, it's a lot darker, a lot more brutal than its predecessor. In ways, it reminds me of Temple of Doom, in which it's a much darker take on the character of Indiana Jones than what was previously done in Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's a completely different tone shift, while staying true to the themes and elements that make the first movie work. And that is what I feel about The Lost World. It still stays true to the themes of Jurassic Park, in which man should not tamper with nature, and they just need to leave it alone, or else things will always go wrong and nature will bite back eventually. And it stays true to them while telling a different story that in ways are the most logical sense in continuing the story of Jurassic Park, including Jeff Goldblum. I am one of the few people that really loves Jeff Goldblum in The Lost World. I know Not a lot of people like this take of Ian Malcolm, but to me, it makes a lot of sense. Because of his experiences in the first film, he would, of course, be a lot more, not, I wouldn't say dark. He takes things a bit more seriously this time around, while still having a bit of sarcasm and fun with the role. Jeff Goldblum does something different with the character, at least something different enough to which he doesn't just come across as like a character who has not learned anything from before. The only reason he came back to the island was for an emotional reason, that is his girlfriend is there. And to me, that is what makes this film, for the most part, work for me. A lot of the character decisions, whether they are stupid, but the movie knows it and pokes at it, and logical, there's nothing that feels out of place story-wise, where it's done unintentionally for a dumb reason or for a smart reason. Everything felt like it had a purpose. The decisions these characters make feel like they have weight to them, and they don't come across as caricatures. And I think some of the scenes with the teammates talking with one another, how the characters interact, I actually found pretty interesting. And I think I view them a bit differently from other people. And I think that's because a lot of people expect the first movie and they just expect like the same movie like Jurassic Park 2. No, this is a lost world. It's its own thing. It's its own different take on the source material. Maybe a bit too different. It barely takes much from the novel, which is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's as good as the first book. Like, this movie isn't that good as the first movie. But it is different in tone enough to still think of it as like part of the same world and universe. And following these characters is just still a lot of fun. The only problems I do have is the third act, or at least getting to the third act. As everyone says, this is the one criticism I agree with. It feels like there's a lot of deleted scenes that were cut from the film. It felt like this was done in like the last minute, just for another action sequence. Not that the sequence itself is bad. It is an awesome scene to see the T-Rex in San Diego, and it comes full circle with the dinosaurs eventually going to the mainland and killing people. Coming full circle as like, this is what will happen if dinosaurs and humans really eventually get into the same world together and wreak havoc. And the fact that this is how things end up, it makes sense. I just felt like we needed more time getting to this ending. And I just feel like it will help with the pacing. It will help clear up a lot of continuity errors within that third act and just make that whole transition a lot smoother. But it does make the story come full circle into a satisfying conclusion for not just this movie, but for the first movie itself, as it basically pays off in a way the dinner scene in which the people, Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, and Jeff Goldblum, Ian Malcolm, they discuss what would happen if dinosaurs and humans really do coexist, and what are the consequences of that. This is the consequence in which the dinner scene was leading up towards. And I felt like if we never had any of the other sequels, this will serve as a great duology of films, staying true to the themes of nature versus man, and how these creatures should just stayed in the past. And overall, in terms of a technical level also, this film is just amazing to look at. This film had a much different cinematographer and photography throughout the entire movie. The look is a lot darker. There's a lot more jungle. It feels more claustrophobic. It feels more lived in and just rugged around the edges. I love the look of Isla Sorna here. I think the cinematography and the way this island was shot was awesome and was very distinct from the first movie. And John Williams' score is once again great, taking a lot more cues from those older monster movies from the 1930s and 40s, most notably King Kong, which you could hear a bit of that in the soundtrack. I love this score. I love the new theme for The Lost World. I listen to it almost all the time, just as much as the original score. In fact, this might be an edge over the original score in my opinion. I don't know, my opinion changes on these John Williams soundtracks all the time for Jurassic Park. They're really good and are still the best soundtracks from any of the Jurassic Park films, games, etc., etc., whatever. John Williams is just an amazing composer. And the directing by Steven Spielberg, how he helms a lot of the action sequences is a lot scarier, a lot more intense, and I gotta say, the trailers off the cliff scene in which Sarah Harding is trapped on top of this glass that's about to break out at any moment, unless Nick gets the bag that's about to break it and Jeff Goldblum to catch Julianne Moore. That whole sequence had so much tension and there are no dinosaurs. It just goes to show how just well helmed this movie is. And while I can understand some criticisms about it, the directing and filmmaking of this film, and the way the animatronics are utilized, and the visual effects, the technical aspects, and the behind the scenes of working on this movie, you can't deny, in many ways, it is technically better than the first movie. Maybe not story-wise, and pacing-wise. That, I think, goes to the first movie. But in terms of actual filmmaking, directing, and cinematography, and production design as well, I love the design of Isla Sorna. I love the abandoned building scene in which the raptors are going in. The raptors in the grass. Everything feels so distinct, even though a lot of it is taking place at night. And in the jungles, it somehow feels distinct, these sequences. Just overall, the filmmaking and directing is some of Steven Spielberg's best. And I honestly sometimes have the urge to watch this more than the first movie because I find more of an entertainment value in this. Though I still think the first movie is an objectively and overall still better movie, I sometimes find myself coming back to The Lost World just a tiny bit more, even despite its problems. And yes, the gymnastic scene is done. That's been talked to death. Let's just get out of the way. It is just a dumb scene, but it lasts 12 seconds, and that's it. Overall, The Lost World Jurassic Park is a technically better film, but in terms of story and pacing, while it still does a great job, it doesn't do as good of a job as the first. It felt like there was some stuff cut out that could help with the pacing, and yeah, that's my main problem. But it still stays true to the themes of the first film, continues the story in a way that makes sense, still has great performances from all the cast members. I love Pete Postlethwaite's role in Tembo. Rest in peace, Pete. You will be missed. I love you in this film. He does a great job as this game hunter that wants to take down a buck T-Rex, and is just an all-around fantastic character, and I love the way his arc ends. Overall, The Lost World just has everything for me. It is also a very nostalgic film. It's the first movie that got me into Jurassic Park. I remember the first scene that I saw of this movie is Peter Ludlow going down the ship containment and finding that baby T-Rex and then getting attacked by the buck. That was my first scene that I've ever seen from any Jurassic Park film, and it is still really good to this day. And not just for nostalgic reasons. I still think as an overall film, this movie holds up incredibly well. It is one of the most overhated movies, in my opinion. I don't think it's as bad as some people say. I've seen a lot of love for this film over time, and I'm so happy about that because I really do think The Lost World is a fantastic film. While not perfect, it is a great continuation of the Jurassic Park story, and I'm going to give The Lost World Jurassic Park an A-. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you guys next time.